nervous.
Hiding is a strong
Why'd you
word.
tuck it under your shirt?
Because it's cold against my skin.
Is that skin?
I have an undershirt on as well. It's in there somewhere, see? First name, Hue Jackson. Some news today, Bomani. After a 33-18 loss to the Stillers, the Browns fired their head coach and their offensive coordinator, Todd Haley. Hue finished with a coaching record of 3-36 and 1. Did he deserve to get canned?
Well, it doesn't really come down to whether he deserved to get fired. You had no argument that he deserved to be retained, right? So, like, once it gets to that point, if you decide to let him go, then boom. What seems to have happened here is the offense went bad. He is an offensive guy. His offensive coordinator was a guy who clearly showed up to try to take his job from him.
Yes.
So rather than pick a side, the owner decided everybody got to go. I get it.
Among coaches who have coached at least 40 games, Hue Jackson has the second worst record, second only to Bert Bell of the Eagles, who was the owner of the team, and that's why that dude didn't get fired. Hue Jackson was already in overtime on his career in Cleveland, and he ended up losing because, of course, it's Hue Jackson. But now we have a report, Bomani, that Greg Williams, with all of the G's, is taking the helm of this team, and that, for a team which has a pretty good defense, that seems to be a sensible decision.
What is sensible about hiring Greg Williams? What are you talking about? Like
the
dude who was part of the bounty situation? Like, we've seen
the old Greg was part of the bounty
situation.
situation.
Greg Williams be a head coach before. Now, normally you think in these situations you don't promote a coordinator, right? You promote like a linebacker coach or an offensive line coach so you can keep some continuity on that side. They hired Greg with 2 G's, who should be Greg with 1 G, because that's a witness protection case that we got here. That was before the league hit him and was like, yo, we're trying to basically get you out of football. And then that dude turned back up looking like this. Like, if you ask him questions about 5 years ago, watch him start stammering as he tries to remember what his cover story is.
But I like the idea that behind the scenes, because there were already reports that maybe it would be Al Saunders, maybe it would be this other person, that Greg Williams has already won a form of power struggle. And the reason why I say that Greg Williams with all the G's might be sensible is because since 1975, there have been 71 teams with a plus 11 turnover margin. The Browns are one of those teams. Everybody has a winning record except for the Browns. The only silver lining to this season has been that defense and this turnover ratio, which Greg Williams with all the G's should be able to have some sort of credit on, right?
Well, the credit you normally give for that is good job running the defense. That does not mean that you put this dude in charge. Now, here's what I'm asking. What is their end goal? Like, what is their end game in this? What are they trying to do for the rest of the season? Like, are they making a playoff run here?
I think, according to John Dorsey, they're just trying to protect Baker Mayfield from criticism and questions about who he likes more.
Okay.
Hope you like Greg.
Next name is Ty Montgomery. Aaron Rodgers is set to get the ball back down 2 with just under 2 minutes to play against the Rams. But then L.A. kicked off to Montgomery. Let's watch what happened next. You really tried to lie to me about those chains.
Montgomery decides to bring it out, and the ball is loose. Yanked it out.
That is a 27-29 game. A dude running out of the end zone 2 feet deep.
Now, the key is he reportedly ignored coaches telling him to kneel and take a touchback. Rodgers, he was not very happy on the sideline. He told him to take a bleeping knee. Pablo, if you run the Packers, what do you do with your man?
You need to send him to the street. And I don't say that lightly. It's simply that I read this Mike Silver story about this game, and he did not only note the Rodgers cursing about taking a bleeping knee, he also noted that about a half dozen players and coaches saw Ty Montgomery in an offensive series prior to this be angry, slam his own helmet down on the ground because he got taken out of the game. They connected that bitterness to him wanting to run out of the end zone and try to do something good. The opposite of that happened. And that, to me, seems fireable. In a game against the Rams where you could have won because you have Aaron Rodgers?
Well, if Hue Jackson has any argument that he shouldn't have been fired, is that there's no way I should have been fired before this dude. Right? Like, this dude should not be on the team anymore. At least if I was in charge, there's no way in the world that he would be around there. Because, look, for the Packers, they went into this game, what, a 9.5-point underdog? They were up for a lot of this game. They played maybe their strongest game of the year. And you take the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands because you, wide receiver who's actually kind of a running back, thinks you got to take this back to the house?
Right, because you, the second-string running back, has delusions of grandeur. And Devontae Adams, after the game, was saying he and Aaron Rodgers and that offense had been talking about exactly what they were going to do. And normally when someone says something like that in a losing effort, it's like, that's some hot air. But it's Aaron bleeping Rodgers, and this is what he does. And this was an opportunity for the Packers to come out and say to everybody, the Rams are not as good as you think they are, at least when they're playing us.
Well, I love the idea that Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams are talking about what they were going to do, and Ty Montgomery was over there like, I know what I'm about to do. I'm about to be the hero, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's all he had in his mind was like a Pepsi commercial, like everything that was going to come. He's like, I ain't even going to do the group celebration with him. It's just going to be me, baby. And, I mean, if he is still on the team by the time America sees us say this, the Packers are slacking.
He went Leroy Jenkins, and when Leroy Jenkins goes Leroy Jenkins, you need to fire that man. That's just the reality of how this game should be. The last name, Bomani, is my second favorite name. It's Jameis Winston. He was benched after his 4th interception yesterday for my Ryan Fitzpatrick, who led the Bucs on a furious fourth-quarter comeback against the Bengals that came up just short. Today, Fitzmagic was named the starter for Week 8 versus the Panthers. Did Dirk Cutter have another choice in this matter?
None. James played poorly enough that there was no other play for them to make. If Fitzpatrick came out and just didn't trip over his own feet, he was going to wind up being there. Because the pick that Jameis was throwing was like, hey, man, you know the other team wears black, right? Like, this is not just like anything that could just be like, oh, this could go either way. He's throwing atom balls to the defense over and over and over again. They couldn't put him back out there, right? Like, he's had turnover problems before. This looked like a dude that was broken.
And, Fitzmagic is kind of my term. I may be the person who first said it in 2011, but who's really counting? But the reason why I want to make the case for Fitzpatrick today is not based on magic, it's just based on logic. Everything you said is absolutely true, except that Ryan Fitzpatrick didn't trip over his feet. He was fan-freaking-tastic. And Ryan Fitzpatrick
he was
right
not
now...
Fantastic.
Yes, he was.
Did you watch that game?
I did watch that game.
Because you saw he almost threw the interception on the sideline when the ball hung in the air. He almost threw another one to that dude over there.
Ball spins in
Pablo's job is to throw an oblong ball.
Ryan Fitzpatrick is now the leader in the NFL in passer rating, and Jameis Winston is the guy with the worst interception rate in the league. So, on the logic of this, the question that Dirk Cutter had to ask himself that he answered correctly, as you point out, is do I want to win in the present tense? Do I want to win right now? And this bearded dude and all of his fake chains, that's the guy who gives them the best choice.
But here's the real question that he has to ask, because yes, he has to start right now. When Ryan Fitzpatrick resumes being who he is, which, by the way, is what happened when he had the job earlier this year, right? He threw 4 interceptions in the last 5 quarters that he played. When he goes back to being who he is, what in the world are they supposed to do then? Like, I don't have an answer for that one.
I don't think Jameis Winston is their future or their present. What we've seen from him this year, the dude, he just broke the tie with Blake Bortles for most multi-interception games since he entered the league.
But here's the question. Do you think that if you put him back out there, it's going to be 10 interceptions in the time period that it was? Because this is outside of the sample that was there previously. Like, it is ridiculous to take that and assume that that is the dude that he is, right? So I'm asking you again, once Ryan Fitzpatrick does the same thing that he has done, what are they supposed to do then? And I don't have an answer at all for that, because if Fitzpatrick goes out there and starts stinking up the joint, are you just going to ride that out?
Well, here's the good news about Ryan Fitzpatrick is that he has never played with an offense this talented, and this is an offense that should be better. Mike Evans, Deshaun Jackson, O.J. Howard, Cam Brate, Chris Godwin.
Pablo, so you are going to ignore the 13 years of evidence of his career on the hope that your buddy from college turns into a new person just because. But again, when he threw those 3 interceptions against the Steelers, he was out there.
That was off a helmet. That was a misread for the tight end.
Okay. And then that horrible half when the Bears in their first half of the Bears game.
He had one bad half and a couple of bad passes.
He came right back to being who he has always been, and that's why I don't know what they're supposed to do and how Dirk Cutter is supposed to save his job.
He is the best passer in the NFL as of today, and that's the truth.
What do you think it was like for Greg Williams' kids the first time they saw him after he had assumed this new persona?
I feel like Greg Williams' kids have seen him change disguises before.
I think he showed up one day and they were just like, yo, where's Dad?
First quote. I hold all the cards now, said David Price after pitching 7 great innings, leading the Red Sox to a World Series championship. Let's listen.
I hold all the cards now, and that feels so good. So that feels so good. I can't tell you how good it feels to hold that trump card. You guys have had it for a long time. You've played that card extremely well, but you don't have it anymore. None of you do, and that feels really good.
Bo, has he redeemed himself forever?
Now, one thing I want to say to our audience is that we have a production staff that really, really likes you guys to feel good about yourselves. And the one device they use to make you feel good about yourselves is to play a sound of me being wrong.
Oh, we're going to it right now. Cue it up.
Go ahead.
Cue it up.
We got 10 years of data. It's not a small sample anymore with David Price. He is borderline useless in October.
08, I believe, was the last good version of Price that we saw.
He had a good game one of them years, a good game. He did, by the way. I went out of my way to point out that good game that he had.
But he is less useless now. And
Apparently,
what do you make of it?
I mean, he pitched well in 2 games and they won the World Series, right? I mean, there's nothing else to say beyond that. There had been a long period of time where you had a dilemma with him. How are you so good in this place and then so bad in this other one? He's right. We can't say it anymore, but it's interesting that he does not think about it in the context of how terribly he pitched in the postseason for 10 years. Just see, you guys were wrong. No, we're wrong now. We were correct.
And there is some irony in him seeing this as a trump card and also him being the guy who railed against nerds. Because the people who were defending him throughout his struggles in the postseason were the nerdiest of nerds who said, look at the larger sample, forget about the playoffs, that's an arbitrary sample, blah, blah, blah. Now he realizes, okay, I can admit to being vulnerable because I actually cared about this a whole lot.
And we found an interesting thing. It seemed he had been tipping pitches there for a while.
Yes.
And then he stopped.
Eliminated the cutter, boosted the changeup, and it worked out.
Good for you, buddy.
You are not useless.
There you go. Big joker. That's who you think you are. Next quote. This is where I'm at. Said Odell Beckham Jr. when asked if the Giants is where he wants to be. Pablo, if you were Odell, how would you feel about your future in New York right now?
I gotta say, this could have been worse. Like, we know that this is a super passive-aggressive answer that indicates that, he doesn't really want to be here right now. But the Giants have seen a version of Odell Beckham Jr. that is far more explicit about his true feelings. So the fact that he didn't demand a trade, the fact that he didn't do any of that, I feel like Odell Beckham Jr. doesn't like to lose. They've lost an insane amount over the last 2 years. This is kind of the best case scenario for a Giants team that's dealt with worse versions of this guy.
Yeah, but he made another point in that interview that I think is worth noting because he seemed to already be playing defense against the idea that if he did not want to be there, why did he sign an extension to be there? And he's like, yeah, but he's like, yo, they could have locked me up through the franchise tag for 3 more years, right? Like there was nowhere for me to go. Who would want to be playing for this team right now? Right? Is there anybody that is on the Giants right now that's waking up being like, damn, I'm so glad I play for them? And of those people, how many of them catch passes from Eli Manning? I mean, honestly, to be fair, I don't even know how anybody does catch passes for Eli Manning, even the wide receivers at this current point in time.
But he is doing it. The guy had 130 yards receiving, plus he's been doing that a bunch of times over the last couple of weeks. And I think the next step is for him to be a little more honest about Kyle Lauletta, right? Get that guy in there because Eli's not there.
His stats are prorating to like a monster season. We just don't notice because they stink.
Yes. Last quote. Malcolm Jenkins called and asked me if I would be comfortable ending my demonstrations. He asked me, well, how much? How much will it take for you to stop? Said Panther safety Eric Reed, clarifying why he called Jenkins a sellout. He shared a story from the players' owners meeting last October about Bills owner Terry Pagula wanting to put an end to players kneeling and saying they needed a black figurehead to do it. Then Eric got a call from Malcolm Jenkins, so let's listen.
When Malcolm called and asked me if I would stop protesting, if I would feel comfortable ending my demonstrations, were his words, if the NFL made a donation to the Players Coalition. I tried not to blow a gasket and tell him no. And then he asked me, well, how much? How much would it take for you to stop? So I ended that conversation with him. That Sunday, Malcolm stopped protesting. I think he said something along the lines, I think it's time for everybody to stop protesting. So Terry Pagula got his black figurehead and Malcolm in the Players Coalition.
Bo, what do you make of Eric Reed grabbing the microphone like that?
Well, it is interesting that this came back up because when it first came up in the interviews, people were asking about him and Josh Norman. And it seemed that he's like, nah, let's go back to that other thing.
Something juicier I want to get into.
That I was talking about. And I'm surprised he didn't say more of this last week because it seemed to be a very clear explication of what it was that he was saying about Malcolm Jenkins and the arguments that he's making. But the big thing about this is if you go through him talking about the deal that was set up, it becomes very clear. The players bought a lemon when it came to dealing with the owners in this case. And it seemed very clear that the owners only cared about making the protest stop, not anything fundamental behind it.
And Eric Reed is now trying to essentially call Malcolm Jenkins to the table and say, explain your side of things because here's how I saw it. And he's also saying, a reminder, why do we trust the NFL on anything, whether it's breast cancer, domestic violence, salute to service? Diana Moskovitz on Deadspin had a great post about this. Why do we trust the NFL as a financial partner?
But that then extends to Malcolm Jenkins, though, right? Because once Malcolm Jenkins makes the deal with them, is he doing the work of the players or is he then an extension of the NFL? That is where they wound up getting caught on this, I believe.
Yes.
Ooh, it does not look good for Malcolm Jenkins. I feel like he owes some people some answers.
And coming up, fart noises.
Download. So Pat Shermer apparently was asked about Eli Manning today, whether he would start next week, and his answer was, we'll see.
Oh.
We'll see.
That's not good to hear from a doctor or an NFL head coach when something important is on the line.
Doctors aren't allowed to say that.
I would hope not. Today's number, 6. That's how many games Ty Lue coached this season before being fired by the Cavs last night. Well, Monty, was this a fair fire?
If I'm Ty Lue, I am less concerned with whether or not this was fair than I am boxing up my stuff and getting the hell out of there as soon as I can. Stay for what? Right? Like, this team looks like it is going to be really, really bad. And I doubt that what's making it bad is the head coach. So, was it fair to fire him? I don't know. If I still get all my money, you work out the fair part, I'm out.
Ty Lue was overseeing a team that had not led in the second half. This is a team that is winless. This is a team that was caught in a hard place if you're Ty Lue. Because on the one hand, you want everybody to say, man, look at all the stuff this guy did. But everybody knows that the confounding variable there is LeBron James. So Ty Lue with a bunch of young guys that he doesn't want to play, because apparently Dan Gilbert wanted him to play more Colin Sexton, except Colin Sexton was taking the most inefficient shots in the league as per second spectrum, and he was favoring the vets. Ty Lue really had no place on this organization at this point anyway.
Well, the best part now is Larry Drew says he's not the interim coach.
No, he's not.
And he is the acting coach because he says basically I'm the substitute teacher and I will not be the coach unless they give me some security, which I totally understand because in the NBA, man, if those dudes don't think you are in charge, you will not be listened to. And Larry Drew been through too much to be out here not being listened to.
Larry Drew said that he is not the interim coach. He is the voice, which means that you guys put a microphone in front of me. This is my voice. In closing, let us listen to noted philosopher and Oklahoma State football coach Mike Gundy address questions about online criticism of his quarterback by doing what he does best.
Criticism where? From where?
Noise.
From where?
Twitter, radio.
Yeah. Oh, I'd give a rat's ass about Twitter. It's a platform for people that are sitting home drawing an unemployment check, sitting in front of a keyboard.
On the one hand, really isn't a great becoming thing to say as an adult who's now 51 years old. But outside of the classism, I kind of agreed with his general thrust of things. Like, why do you have to care about social media? Is it really all that important? I think in our business, we often make a mistake of overemphasizing it.
Yeah, no, there's that, but you're not going to poverty shame me with that haircut, homie. Under no circumstance you're going to be out here talking about they look like they about to miss a pay. Man, look at you, right? Look at who you are. Look at what you're about right there. But I will say this as a Texas fan. After watching our head coach run out there and embarrass himself and get a 15-yard penalty, thank you, Mike Gundy, for doing something actually just a little bit more embarrassing.
Yes, Mike Gundy does not claim that he is a member of Mensa, as your head coach Tom Herman does claim.
He is one. Like he went and filled out the paperwork.
Which automatically means you're very smart as per the rules of intelligence in the world. But yeah, Mike Gundy has kind of the party in the back socioeconomic inequality in the front deal going, which is a bad look.
Texas has lost 3 games, by the way. Remember, is Texas back to 3 losses? How about that? West Virginia next week.
Get excited.
In closing, here's an update in Penny Hardaway's plan to put the Memphis back in Memphis. Top recruit James Wiseman is from Memphis. He hasn't decided where he's going to school, but look who showed up at his house after his official visit to the University of Memphis. That's right, 2 Memphis legends.
Oh,
That's Zebo and that's Moneybag Yo. Here they are at his house. Like, Penny is like, look, man, I know what I'm doing here. I ain't sitting no Drake. I'm not doing that. That boy wants to see Moneybag Yo and Zebo.
by the way, Zebo is still employed as a member of the Sacramento Kings, and he is flying cross-country to Memphis to represent for his state. And Moneybag Yo, if you're a person out there in the NCAA compliance office, he is not a bag man. His name is merely Moneybag Yo.
Yeah, like, yo, so tell me about this money bag gentleman that you send there. We hear that the money bag is a slang term for illicit payments. Is this an accurate thing? And I feel pretty confident that Moneybag Yo ain't giving up none of his hard-earned money for them. You better go call that man at FedEx if you want somebody to trick off.